Monday morning, sirens in Tel Aviv warning citizens of an incoming missile launch. The alert also reached airline passengers at Ben Gurion Airport.
Can we get off the plane? It's a missile. Missiles are coming here. We need to get off this airplane, please.
Across the country, in what's become an all-too-common occurrence, Israelis headed to shelters. And in hospitals, medical workers brought patients to safety. In total, Iran launched 3 waves of missiles at Israel. This footage, released by Iran's Revolutionary Guard, claims to show a missile aimed at a petrochemical facility in Haifa. But again, for the most part, Israel's air defense systems held firm. Meanwhile, in Iran, state TV reported Israeli airstrikes in Tehran, Tabriz, and Isfahan. Iran's foreign ministry justified their attacks on Israel, citing repeated Israeli ceasefire violations, including actions by Israel against Lebanon. It's also Tehran's position that it's on the U.S. to rein in Israel.
Without a doubt, as I said, the actions of the Zionist regime in the region cannot be separated from U.S. policies.
U.S. President Donald Trump, who wants the ceasefire to hold so as not to undermine U.S. negotiations with Iran on ending their conflict, went on his Truth social network demanding both sides stop shooting. And Israel and Iran have now said they're both halting attacks.
At this moment, the fire on that front is ceased. After we struck the terror regime in Tehran, it stopped attacking us. If the terror regime makes the mistake of resuming attacks against us, we will respond with full force, because the State of Israel has a complete right to self-defense, and we will exercise it as much as it is required.
So for those caught in the crossfire, like here on the outskirts of Damascus, where this intercepted Iranian missile fell from the sky, that means all quiet for now, until possibly the next time.
Let's examine this with Aaron David Miller, who worked within the US State Department for 24 years, advising Democratic and Republican Secretaries of State on Middle East policy. He's now a senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, where he focuses on US foreign policy. Welcome back to DW. Do you expect this ceasefire to hold?
The answer is for now. But I think you have a combination of factors that presage increasing possibilities of escalation. You have a very emboldened, risk-ready Iran who wanted to turn Beirut into a sort of zone of immunity in an effort to protect Hezbollah from Israeli strikes. You have an Iran that is very unhappy with its ceasefire with the United States, that it's not producing its intended effect. And you have an Israeli prime minister who is caught between seeming unwillingness to offend and to break with Donald Trump on one hand, who will come under increasing pressure to escalate in Lebanon should Hezbollah resume its attacks, and public pressure, very popular, particularly for the northern residents of Israel, to strike Hezbollah. So right now, without an agreement on the main event between U.S. and Iran on a memorandum of understanding and negotiations to defuse the blockade and opening the straits, I suspect it's only a matter of time before you see another escalation in Lebanon.
Okay. Iran has been weakened significantly militarily and economically. Why is it now so emboldened despite that?
Because it thinks it's winning. It's deployed geography with a terrifyingly impactful effect. It has demonstrated to the world, the international community, the global oil industry, that it can control the Straits of Hormuz and close them at will. Number two, it's demonstrated that it can put at risk the security and stability of the Gulf states and to expose the Dubai model, that is to say, the Gulf states becoming an entrepot of finance, of culture, of sports, of high tech, that it has, that now is increasingly fraught. And it is also for the brutal, repressive, authoritarian regime that is now in control. For them, it's an existential question.
Right.
So frankly, they have no choice. They're either going to have their interests predominate, or they will be willing to allow the war to resume with the United States. I think they also said, in a sense, that the president is very risk averse and doesn't want to return to conflict.
The Pakistani Prime Minister said today that the final objective in peace negotiations between Iran and the US is just about to be achieved. What's your understanding of what that means?
We've seen so much media, not necessarily from the intermediaries, but largely from the president, that an agreement was around the corner. And clearly, it's been much harder than anyone would have anticipated. The two issues that are critical.
I just wanted to interrupt you there, because this is the first time we've heard that from Pakistan. So if Pakistan, the lead mediator in this, is convinced that they are somewhere towards a deal, what do you think they are somewhere towards actually agreeing?
Here's what I think, as someone who's been around negotiations for a very long time. You can't do this through intermediaries. You can't do this on the back of a cocktail napkin. You can't do it on cell phone. Even if they reach a one-page memorandum of understanding, the issues that need to be joined here, the highly enriched uranium, sanctions relief, unfrozen assets, mutual security guarantees, how to open up the straits, how to reduce and ease the naval blockade, what to do about the 11 tons of uranium that is enriched at varying levels. All of these issues need to be negotiated directly between Americans and Iranians. So yes, the mediators may be optimistic, and maybe they will get a one-page memorandum of understanding. But we are far away from anything that normal humans would regard as an agreement to actually end the war and stop it from reoccurring. I'll add Lebanon to that mix as well.
Right. And finally and briefly, President Trump's gone on record as saying he's not bothered about the effect of this war on November's midterms. If that's true, what is driving US efforts to get this deal over the line?
I think what's driving this is the president's ego. How is he going to spin a win? How does he open the straits without paying for it? Without unfreezing Iranian assets? The straits were open February 27th. One of the key issues, the ultimate disposition of who won or who lost this war, is going to be dependent on what happens to the straits. And then there's the nuclear issue. So I think the biggest constraint, not the midterms, he could blame this on the Republican candidates, bad party, bad candidates. It's not the affordability issue. It's not gas prices. It's whether or not Donald Trump, in the face of the gravest foreign policy crisis of his presidency, comes off as a winner,
right,
or someone who's perceived to be a loser and who has emboldened the very regime he sought to undermine.
Thank you for guiding us through that so clearly. Aaron David Miller from the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Thank you so much.
I asked Megan Sutcliffe of the Sibylline Risk Consultancy what she makes of the temporary flare-up in fighting between Israel and Iran.
It's certainly been a concerning few hours when it comes to engagements between Israel and Iran, but it would appear that for now, this chapter of re-escalation has closed, even though tensions remain particularly acute within the Middle East. In the next few days, what we can expect is, rather than this situation having been taken back to square one, rather we're more likely to see both parties continue to engage in a pattern of escalation and pushing of one another's boundaries. When it comes to Israel, that will likely manifest in terms of airstrikes continuing to target Lebanon in order to establish at what point exactly Iran will retaliate. For Iran, that will likely include the continued targeting of vessels in the Persian Gulf, the Strait of Hormuz, and the Gulf of Oman, as well as intense rhetoric targeting Israel. All of this presents a unique mixture of threats that potentially takes us back to the cusp of re-escalation, which of course would be extremely disruptive for a region that has faced so much over the past 100 days.
Iran is calling on the U.S. to rein in Israel. It says the U.S. is responsible for enforcing the ceasefire agreement with Israel and that the U.S. will bear the consequences if it doesn't. What do you make of that?
Well, that's certainly something that we have seen Iran really trying to emphasize throughout the course of this conflict. This has been one of the ways in which Iran has criticized the United States in various media outlets over the past 100 days, that being characterizing this war as essentially something that is exclusively within Israel's interests and that the US has been duped into participating in, while also emphasizing that the United States should essentially throw its weight around in order to enforce the ceasefire within Lebanon and constrain Israeli military action within Lebanon. It's very clear, though, that there is neither the desire and potentially not the capacity for the United States to do this. Of course, Israel is its own state. The IDF is its own military, and therefore it does not respond directly to US orders. And while there is certainly a close relationship between the US and Israel, and it's unlikely that we would see Israel engaging in activity that was directly counter to US interests, that's not to say that it's going to be identical.
There are personalities involved here. We've got Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Trump. Is Netanyahu listening to President Trump anymore, do you think? To what degree are they still coordinating their actions in dealing with Iran, do you think?
Well, it's very clear that there is still a relationship between Netanyahu and Trump and that they continue to talk very frequently. Of course, we had Trump issuing many statements last night indicating that he was about to speak to Netanyahu. And so there is a degree of personal contact between these two leaders. And it is possible that particularly over the past 48 hours, we've seen that relationship being tested in a way that it possibly hasn't before. But that's not to say that there isn't flexibility within this relationship. There have been many instances in which there have been tensions between Netanyahu and Trump. For example, they had a personal falling out after the 2020 election when Netanyahu recognized President Biden as the winner of the presidential election in the US. Last year in September, Israel engaged in an airstrike targeting a Hamas office in Qatar, something that the US was extremely opposed to, and that was a major diplomatic sticking point. So this is not a relationship that has always been smooth, but it's also not one that will imminently collapse based on potential increases in tension. It's also worth noting that there is a realistic possibility that this does not represent a major split between the United States and Israel, that rather they continue to move in lockstep. And rather, Trump's criticisms of Netanyahu and of Israel more broadly are actually part of a narrative effort on his part to distance the US from Israel, portray Israel as an entirely autonomous military actor, and therefore, within negotiations with Iran, decouple the talks that are currently ongoing about the ceasefire extension, the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, and Iran's nuclear program from those talks that would also relate to Lebanon. This is something that Trump has made very clear he is passionate about pursuing. And so it is possible that rather these statements don't reflect a genuine split, but rather they are part of strategic deception that aims to influence the way that Iran engages with the United States during ongoing indirect ceasefire negotiations.
Interesting. Megan, thank you very much. Megan Sutcliffe of the risk consultancy Sibylline.